So the inevitable has finally happened and people I work with have discovered my channel. A few weeks ago, the assistant manager asked about my channel, I told him what it is, and ever since he's been telling everybody at work to subscribe. And I'm not even sure if any of my co-workers have even watched Doctor Who. I'm not exactly the best introduction to the franchise. I mostly cover really niche stuff. Things that you'd only really be interested in if you're already neck deep into the franchise, to the point where you're spending time and money building replicas of screwdrivers from the audios, which is a failing of mine. After all, not everyone is interested in things like the true identity of the Veliard, little bits of Fanon like Season 6B, or the relationship dynamics between Time Lords and humans, and a brief history of shipping in sci-fi.
Well, this is gay.
You have to be interested in the show first. Fuck me, I've been doing this all backwards. So, first off, I'd like to say, hi people I work with. Now you know what I do in my spare time. It's always the quiet ones, isn't it? But since you're here, I might as well do something with popular appeal for once, and do a how-to guide for getting into Doctor Who, so you at least know what the hell I'm going on about in these videos. Okay, I think that's a great idea. I will be your Virgil, guiding you through the intricacies of this frankly ridiculous franchise. I will tell you what the show is, a little bit of the history, and some good places to start. So, starting off, what is Doctor Who? That one is a little bit difficult. You gotta admit, it's just a little bit weird. There's bug-eyed monsters and a tinfoil man, a guy dressed as a moth and a garbage can, Chumbleys, Yetis, potatoes and sogs, a sentient clitoris and a robot dog. There's Oob, Batraxi, cat people and more, rhino men and teddy bear face aliens from a planet called Raxacorical I sometimes wonder what people outside the fandom think that this show even is. I actually came across somebody who thought that Doctor Who was a sci-fi themed game show. What would that even look like? Hello, welcome to Doctor Who. Tonight's contestants are two nosy school teachers I kidnapped in a junkyard. Now, Chesterton, the object of this game is simple. Find the control to open the doors and I'll let you both go. Get it wrong, and you'll get electrocuted. Oh, tough luck, old boy. But what is Doctor Who really? Doctor Who is a sci-fi TV series that started in the 60s. It's a show with an ingenious premise. Any-when, anywhere. A premise that makes the show an infinite story machine. One week, the Doctor could be fighting Daleks in the far future, and the next he could be fighting Daleks in the modern day. The Daleks pop up a lot. They're these guys, you like them. He could be knocking around with Achilles, interfering with events in the Trojan War, and the next they could come across Arthurian techno knights with guns and shit, from an alternate universe in search of Excalibur. The story potential is nearly endless. Doctor Who was first envisioned as a way of educating kids on science and history. A show about a cranky old bastard who can't drive his space-time ship, who abducts two school teachers and drags them through sci-fi adventures and important events in history. But as the show really got big, a lot of the education angle was abandoned in favour for fun space-time adventures. But it's still there, just not the main focus anymore. The Doctor is an alien, supposedly from the planet of Gallifrey, home of the Time Lords. I say supposedly because the jury is currently out on that one. Thank you very much, Chibnall. Now it's a little bit more complicated, a little bit more wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey. But to make this as accessible as possible for first-timers, let's just say that he's a Time Lord from the planet of Gallifrey in the constellation of Castaverus, and leave it at that. Do not at me 13th Doctor stands. So Time Lord is a rank, not a species. To become a Time Lord, you have to pass an entrance exam, to receive genetic modifications that gives you certain abilities that we'll get into later. The Time Lords are a civilization that fancy themselves lords of time and keepers of the chronology of the universe, sworn never to interfere, only to observe and watch over the universe. So naturally, they interfere all the damn time. Really, they're just the first bastards to discover time travel, and they used it to retroactively make everything revolve around them. It's unknown why the Doctor left. It's always been shrouded in mystery, but whether through boredom or some other extenuating circumstances, the Doctor took his granddaughter, stole an obsolete Type 40 time space vehicle called a Tardis, and fled his home to explore the universe. In his travels, he saw fantastic wonders, but he also saw the ugly reality of the cosmos. He saw evil and exploitation, good people being taken advantage of, and the strong crushing the weak underfoot. The Doctor is from a society that views everyone else in the universe as being beneath them, and he held on to that societal sickness, until he travelled with some school teachers who he accidentally kidnapped one time when they followed his granddaughter home one night to find out why she's so damn weird. In their travels, he grew fond of their humanity. Ian's courage and bravery, and Barbara's tenderness and strong will when it came to standing up for what she believes in. He learned to see himself on their level rather than above them. The Doctor went from being a crotchety old bastard to some kind of eccentric champion of justice and defender of the underdog. But as time went on, they came across some problems. In the first few years of the show, Doctor Who was getting big, and when I say big, I mean really big. Like really, really big, particularly the main villains, the Daleks, who were so big they made movies starring Peter Cushing. But William Hartnell, the guy that cast as the Doctor, was getting on in years, and the poor sweet old man was getting a little bit senile. So they had a very tough decision to make. End this show that was an international sensation with fans on every continent, or recast and risk losing the goodwill of the fandom. They ended up going with the latter option, casting the magnificent Patrick Troughton as the second Doctor. The original idea was that the Doctor had been renewed, rejuvenated into a younger version of himself, but this new Doctor looked and acted completely different. More of a cosmic hobo than a crotchety yet whimsical space bastard. They had stumbled upon the best attribute of this show, the ability to change the actor every few years, bringing with it a new feel, new aesthetics, and ability for the show to continually renew itself. The Doctor, being a Time Lord, has the ability to regenerate. That means that on the brink of death, every cell is rewritten, and in a flash, they come out looking completely different, acting completely different. They are still the same person, same memories, same beliefs, but all of their traits are sort of muddled around into a different configuration. So the second Doctor is the same person as the first, just as the 13th Doctor is the same person as the 12th. They've done it 14 times now, dividing the show into 15 distinct eras. Each one brings something new to the character and the mythos. So, what is this Tardis thing I've been talking about? The Tardis is a time-space vehicle that allows the Doctor and friends to travel through time and space. Its name is an acronym, Time and Relative Dimension in Space. It can travel anywhere in the universe and to any period via the time vortex, a realm that exists outside of space. And it's bigger on the inside, a result of transdimensional engineering, which makes sense because shut up.
Which box is larger?
That one.
Now which is larger?
That one.
But it looks smaller.
Well, that's because it's further away.
Exactly. If you could keep that exactly that distance away and have it here, the large one would fit inside a small one.
That's silly.
Essentially, the outer shell is a doorway to the interior that exists outside of time and space. The interior of the TARDIS is basically infinite, and sometimes it rearranges its rooms just to fuck with people. It contains a kitchen, library, swimming pool, bedrooms, and for reasons of budget, we rarely see anything other than the console room. It also has active desktop controls. It can look like a gothic castle, or it could look like an iconic 60s set, or it could be this beautiful wood-panelled set, or whatever this is. But why the hell is it a police box?
What's with the police box? Why does it look like that?
It's a cloaking device.
It's called a chameleon circuit. The TARDIS is meant to disguise itself wherever it lands. Like if this was ancient Rome, it'd be a statue on a plinth or something. But I landed in the 1960s, it disguised itself as a police box and the circuit got stuck.
Why don't you just fix the circuit?
I like it, don't you?
I love it.
There's been a few attempts to fix it. Ford tried to give it a software patch with the help of mathematician priests who have been holding back the heat death of the universe for millennia now by chanting equations at it. The Sixth Doctor had a little bit more success by simply rewiring the thing.
How do we get in?
I'm not sure. This is getting ridiculous.
But nothing the Doctor did ever really stuck, and I hope it never does. The police box is iconic, and as much a part of the fabric of the show as the Doctor themselves. One important thing about the TARDIS is that it's not just a vehicle, it's also alive, with a consciousness of its own and a non-linear fourth-dimensional perspective of reality. There's this one really awesome episode written by Neil Gaiman, where the soul of the TARDIS is sucked out and put into the body of a woman, and we get a real insight into the Doctor's relationship with his ship, and just what she thinks about all of the companions. Like, from her perspective, she stole the Doctor because she wanted to go and see the universe, and often the Doctor has no control over where she takes him. But the Doctor rarely travels alone. Usually these companions are human, but not always, and for some bizarre reason, they're usually from modern-day Earth. The companions act as audience avatars and sort of main characters. We view the Doctor's world through their eyes, but I firmly am of the opinion that they do not need to be someone from the modern day to fulfill that need. The Doctor's had many companions over the years. A lot of them have happy endings, but others not so much. Some have suffered horrible fates, others displaced in time, and others sacrificed themselves for the greater good. Alright, so that's all the basics. With nearly 60 years of canon, where the hell do you start? It can be very daunting, and these days, with all of media being serialised, we are kind of conditioned to think that we need to start at the beginning. Like you wouldn't start watching Game of Thrones or Breaking Bad from some random season. Doctor Who is different though. You can start at any season and still get a full experience. I started where most Whovians of my generation started. Season 1 of the revived show. For a lot of Whovians who are now obsessed with the show, their first Doctor was the 9th Doctor. And later on, after watching the new show for years, I became very curious about the classics and got into those too. In my first video, I tried to do a sort of guide to the Doctor Who audio dramas, and my advice for where to start then is the same here. Pick a doctor or a companion and start from their first episode. But it can be difficult to make up your mind, and if you're a millennial or zoomer, more accustomed to modern television, I wouldn't advise starting with the classics. The pacing is very much old sci-fi. So here are some suggestions. Suggestion 1. Rose. The first episode of the first season of the new show. Rose is a fantastic introduction. It follows Rose, a 19-year-old who feels like her life isn't going anywhere. Filling her days with work and sleep and chips and work again, she meets a mysterious figure breaking the monotony of her life, saving her from killer shop dummies, blowing up her work, and with nothing better to do, she becomes obsessed with figuring out who this mysterious stranger is and why these strange things are happening around her. Suggestion 2. Blink. Blink is a non-conventional one. It barely features the Doctor at all, and isn't a typical episode in any way, but what it is an excellent introduction to the horror that the show can sometimes bring. It's a very powerful horror story with an incredible yet simple premise. It follows the story of a woman and her friend investigating an old dilapidated building, covered in graffiti warning you not to blink. They soon realise that the place is absolutely riddled with statues that can move, but only when you're not looking at them. And if they get you, they will displace you in time, feeding off your potential existence as you live your life to death in the past, essentially killing you in an instant. I'd tell you more about this one, but I don't want to spoil it, so just get into this one. It's a really good horror episode. Suggestion 3. The 11th Hour. This is the first episode of Season 5 and the 11th Doctor's run. The Doctor, newly regenerated, crashes his Tardis in the backyard of an unsupervised little Scottish girl, with a very scary crack in her bedroom wall and an intergalactic prisoner hiding in the spare room. If I said any more, I'd spoil it, but this is a really good one to start with. It's the most popular jumping on point for a reason. Suggestion 4. The Pilot. This one is literally designed as a jumping on point. Despite being in the last season of the 12th Doctor's run, they even called it the pilot. It's very on the nose. It follows the life of a new companion, Bill Potts. She works in a cafeteria of a university and becomes fascinated with a particular professor. He's the Doctor, and he's somewhat retired at this point. They become mates and the Doctor is ripped out of retirement when they discover a scary puddle. It's far less silly than it sounds. It's also from one of the only seasons that I bothered to get on Blu-ray, and it's really, really good. You should watch it. So that's Doctor Who. It can be a jumbled mess at times, but it's also one of the best series when it comes to the sheer variety of stories it can tell. It is my favourite show ever, and it is my absolute pleasure to show you just how much of a nerd I am. If Doctor Who seems like something that you would be interested in, check it out. BritBox subscriptions are very cheap and they have the entire show. If not, don't.